Right, welcome to this week's edition of the Old Parachute Podcast, a podcast designed to, where we speak to a wide variety of guests from all walks of life, and we talk about their fascinating lives and careers, with the main goal of raising awareness for mental illness, mental health issues within the emergency services and the veterans communities. If you haven't already, please go to the YouTube channel and give the page a follow. It all helps. But without further ado, today's guest, former professional rugby player, former international rugby player, Charlie Hodgson. How you doing, pal? All right?
All right, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, really good, thank you. I always hate that introduction bit. That's the bit that always, you know. But yeah, I've perfected it a little bit. It's an absolute pleasure for you coming on. I really, really appreciate you taking the time. I'm sure you're very, very busy. What I like to do with all the podcasts is I like to get a bit of a background about the guest, where they grew up, what they were like as a kid, and sort of ultimately what led them down the path that they took. So yeah, over to you, Charlie.
Where'd you start? All right, I was from a northern family from Halifax. Very stereotypical northern family, I guess. Like no frills. I was fortunate enough to go to private school in Bradford, but I spent a lot of my childhood really just being outside the majority of the time, and that was playing all kinds of sport. Whilst I went to a school that played rugby union, I watched rugby league every week, and Halifax was my team. And we seemed to travel around the north watching them on Sundays. And I think my journey started with watching them when I was like 6 or 7 years old, when they got to the Challenge Cup final at Wembley, and that kind of opened my eyes to professional rugby. Didn't quite understand it really at that stage. It was just one of those where I loved going and watching. But as I said, I went to a union playing school, and I was at union playing school. I played for the Old Bodleians in Halifax, and kind of everything just took off from there. But it wasn't easy by any means. But just I had a huge love of being outside, of being competitive, of playing all sport, and just escaping and getting out. Yeah, just being outside more than anything else.
Yeah, I think that's a kind of generational thing. I mean, I'm not too similar generations to yourself. The outside bit, the sports, playing football for 6-7 hours outside in the summer holidays, the climbing the trees and stuff. That was what we were about, because we didn't have you say luxury, but I see it. I'm glad I grew up without social media, if I'm completely honest, because I see kids now, and it's no fault of their own. I mean, if we had it when we were kids, we'd have probably been exactly the same as the generation now, sat on it, not wanting to do anything other than be on it. So
no, I
I'm
get
glad I
that.
grew up without it.
I get that. I think I have that with my kids as well. Like we're always having to push them to get outside and get off the phones and get outside and do something. And it's not having that distraction would be much easier. But yeah, it's it is what it is now, isn't it? We're learning to live with that as parents, and even as kids. They're coming up. They've got to know how to use it, because it's part and parcel of their lives. But yeah, I think I'd prefer them to have what I had when I was growing up. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. It created experiences and kind of memories and stuff. And, like I say, it's one of them things now, and we just have to kind of manage it correctly. So it's not, obviously we'll come on to it at some point. I'm a big advocate for kind of mental health. And I don't want social media to affect kids growing up and their mental health. There's big links with the whole dopamine and stuff, but it's a massive topic. But no, yeah, playing sports at school, we didn't really have. This is one of my biggest regrets, is not having a crack at rugby. We didn't have that ability at school. Not ability, that option for us. It wasn't one of our options. We had like hockey, basketball, and I think football. And I think if I'd have started playing rugby at like 11, I mean, I was 85 kilos when I was 17 years of age. I've always been quite quick over 100 meters and stuff like that. And I just wish I'd have kind of got into it. My lad's the same now, he's 15 and he's built like a barn door. He's quite quick.
Right.
I'm trying my best, but he's not going for it. But
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of those games you've got to get into a little bit earlier. I mean, there's a few of my mates that I played with who did start rugby a little bit later, but the way the game's going now, and it's probably why I'm doing what I'm doing. The game has become more professional from a much younger age, and it's not like you used to be able to get away with starting when you're 15, 16, 17. But I think now people are starting from a much younger age, and they're taking it more seriously from a younger age. Then there's the development is much quicker. Whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right there. There's a lot. You get the odd exception, don't you, where people come into it late and they have this natural ability and able. But I think to stand a chance in any sport, whether that be boxing, football, rugby, you've got to be kind of into it sort of before you hit secondary school, really, to not stand a chance, but because it's such a competitive market. Everyone wants to be footballers, or they want to be kind of rugby players, because
Mm,
they see it, it's in the public eye, see it on television, they think, oh, I want to do
yeah,
that. But reality
yeah.
is very few go on and become professionals, don't
Yeah, I think so, but I think at the same time, if I compare my journey from when I started in the academies they were there, but they weren't really in place, and they just had like one man and his dog like overseeing an area and watching players play rugby. There was no real like focus on it and understanding of how it worked. It wasn't like football at all. But now, like you sort of they cast these nets far and wide from like 14, 15 years old, and as I say, there's like kids who are now 14, 15, almost seeing the dream at 18, like they can see it 4 or 5 years ahead of them going, I can see that. There's people ahead of me that I can see getting contracts, and there's a genuine pathway there, which I think perhaps there wasn't certainly when I started.
Yeah, I know we early on in this chat, we criticise social media, but obviously it has its place as well, because kids do see, they get to see more, don't they? When we were growing up, if you wanted to watch a rugby match, or you wanted to watch football highlights, you had to watch match of the day, or watch it on a Saturday afternoon, or whenever it was on.
Yeah.
It's accessible 24/7 now, so they will see this, and I suppose in a way that is a good part of it, because they get to see the options that are open to them.
Yeah, they do. But I think at the same time, I have a little bit of an issue with this in terms of, and I'm going to put more detail around it, but in terms of like game management and game understanding, you don't get that by watching a 7 second clip on Instagram, like, and seeing somebody's highlight reels. You don't get that understanding, and it requires a lot more patience just to sit there and watch games and understand what goes on. I used to, so when I used to watch rugby league, I used to sit at the end of the field, and I kind of used to weirdly, from a very young age, just almost see it as a game of chess and watch how the players moved around the field. And that's where I think whilst I played it was a different sport and played union, it gave me a really good understanding of what I needed to do and how I needed to understand the moving parts of a game. And I think that's where the difference is now, is that we've got really, really talented players, unbelievably skillful players, and they know exactly what they're doing. It's just like, so having the game understanding and sort of sometimes the pragmatism to understand how to win matches as well.
Yeah, I get that. You can watch what you like, but to understand and be part of it and actually put that into practice, two very different things, aren't they? So
Definitely,
yeah, no, I
definitely.
understand that. So obviously, moving on from your career, obviously, secondary school, normal route through secondary school, and then on to college and university, or
Yeah. So I talked before about in terms of the academies, they weren't necessarily in place, and the system at the back in those days was like county system, north of England, and then into England schoolboys. And so I went through that sort of 15s, 16s, and 18s. 16s, when I got into the England squad, I broke my wrist, dislocated my wrist in the first training session, so didn't play any of those matches. And then into England schoolboys at 18. I was always really small, though. I was always told I was not big enough. I was never going to make it. All of these sorts of things, all these messages every single time I went to a trial. It was just like, no, you're not big enough. But yet somehow I'd manage to scrape in and then I'd get an opportunity where I'd sit on the bench, and then I'd come on for 20, 25 minutes of a game, or perhaps a bit less, and do something that obviously caught their eye, and it kept me involved the whole time. So I was never one of these like unbelievable standout players that they were like, he's a definite route for you into professional rugby. It just, yeah, I just managed to kind of, through the skin of my teeth, managed to keep getting through, and being given more opportunities. And then I suppose you make your own luck, don't you, in that sense? But then I left school I went to Durham University. I didn't have an option of a professional club when I left school. So even though I played England schoolboys, there was no option for me to play professional sport. So I went to Durham, and just thought I'd do the normal university route. I started doing a degree in sports science. And it was during that first year I was playing for Yorkshire under-20s. And I happened to be watched by the academy manager at the time of Sale Sharks. He was at the match watching the scrum half that I was also in my team, but he didn't have a clue about me. And I just happened to have a good game. And off the back of that, he invited me to pre-season training with Sale between my first and second year of uni. And I was like, well, I might as well give it a go. It was early stages of professional sport. It was 2000, year 2000, early stages. And I thought, you know what, I'll create a nice relationship with the club, and then I'll go back to university for my second year. And then, as it transpired, is that what I didn't realise at the time, there was me and another guy were basically vying for a kind of a reserve fly-half spot within the squad. So pre-season went really well from my perspective, and then they asked me to sign a contract at the end of that summer. And so I had this choice to go back to uni and sort of continue my studies, or just sack it off and go into the professional sport. So it was just one of those where I was like, well, there's no bit of a no-brainer. I'll give it a go. So I signed my first contract in August 2000. I'd managed to get into the first team sort of October, November of that year, 2000. And then fast forward 13 months later, November 2001, I was making my debut for England. So like I'd gone from being like schoolboy, student, professional sportsman, international within a really, really short space of time. And I think that's a kind of ultimately why I found things difficult mentally at first, certainly when I was playing sport, and I suppose further on really is because I wasn't mentally prepared for it all. I wasn't ready. I was just still getting pissed twice a week, and just like I was still a student, and yet I was doing this sport on a weekend where lots of people came to watch, and you're suddenly mixing with the likes of Martin Johnson and playing against people like that and Lawrence Dallaglio and stuff, and it's like all a bit surreal. So yeah, it was mad how it all kind of worked out, and all happened very, very quickly. But it's like, so you kind of make your luck, don't you, and being in the right place at the right time as well.
Yeah, it's a bit of fate, but what I want to touch on there. There's a bit that you talked about early on in that part. There was like told constantly that you're too small, that you're not going to make it, and that's obviously kind of a compliment to your mindset, because you get told no, you're not going to do it, but you're like a bit like inside. And I can relate to that, because I got told a lot of that about the unit I was going to join when I was 17 in the military. It's like, oh, you'll never do that because of this. So it's a bit like inside, isn't it? It's like, I will show you. And it's a bit like reverse psychology, isn't it? My dad said that to me. Oh, I don't think you'll do it. But I believe that was a bit more tough love. It was a bit like, I know if I tell him he won't do it, he'll just do whatever he can to prove me wrong. And it is, isn't it? And that's a bit of mindset as well, isn't it? When people are telling you can't. And I think that's really good advice to give to younger generations as well, is, just because you might take a knockdown early on in what you're trying to achieve. And I think we'll come on to it later, as I've kind of read about when you left international rugby and how you tried various things. And it's not always that cut and dried, is it? Like for you there, you were very, very not lucky. You worked hard, but you went from, England schoolboys and at uni all of a sudden to, like you say, within a very, very short space of time. But that's down to kind of you wanting to push it. So yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, completely. I think as I said, when I grew up, I used to play a lot of sport, and I'd go down and I'd always be looking out for a game of football against lads who were older than me. I had that real sort of competitive drive, and I always wanted to try and beat the kids that were older than me. And so it just kind of transferred later on. So when I was getting told by these selectors that you're not big enough and you're not good enough, it's just a bit like, no, I'm not having that. I can't. I didn't obviously say anything back to them, but I just took it, and I was like, yeah, fine. But then they had this internal drive in me that I was like, I don't want to listen to that, and I'll keep going, and hopefully something will eventually happen, and thankfully it did.
Yeah, but there's, for every case there is, like yourself, there's probably several cases where that individual will listen to what they're being told and probably never then go on and go, oh, okay, then, well, if I'm told, I'm not going to do it. And then, maybe quit or see, and then that's a shame. I think we should be nurturing people maybe a bit. Maybe times have changed now, and hopefully, with the kind of the stuff that we'll come on to that you're doing, hopefully that is kind of a bit different now, which I suspect it probably will be. Times have changed. That's 25 years ago, isn't it? And things have definitely kind of moved in a different direction now.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think there's still stuff now where they are selected based on physical presence as opposed to anything else.
Really?
And I think that still happens. Yeah, because ultimately, like, I suppose you can see it. I see it a lot in schoolboy rugby and youth rugby. Like, you're always going to get the kids who are bigger than everybody else, and they're always going to dominate, and that's great. But at the same time, how far does that get you? And I guess the academies, they know what they're doing. They've got all these studies and measurements they can take of people. I'm sure there's a lot of evidence behind it. But I just sometimes think cutting your nose off to spite your face. Sometimes if you're always going to go with the kids who are physically more dominant, even from a young age.
Yeah, it's a bit of human nature as well, though. We tend to do things visually and think, oh, he'd knackered, without knowing the ins and outs. And we do it every day. We form opinions, sadly, on people based on what we see. As much as we move forward with that, I think there's always going to be a part of that. It's just human nature, isn't it, Sad?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so obviously you played professional rugby 16-year career, thereabouts. Obviously 11 years with Sale Sharks, and then you kind of moved on to Saracens. So highlights for playing, when you played with Sale, any standout moments or any kind of, and I want to ask you this through, when you played for Sale, for Saracens, and when your international career, people that you come up against where you thought, oh, because we've seen, for me as a fan, and I am a rugby fan, it's like, you look at Sebastian Chabot, you look at the Lawrence Delalios, the Martin Johnsons, and all these people, the Jonah Lumus and all that. And you kind of, you look at them and you think, there's the people that you've come up against and you thought, holy shit, this is just ridiculous,
Far too many of those, I think.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, where do you start? Like, one of my first games for Sale was against Newcastle. They had Inga Twigamala playing from on the wing, like unbelievably big Samoan. I would play for New Zealand, but at Rugby Union, and went to Wigan Warriors. Was just an absolute beast of a player, and he blindsided me in one of my first professional matches. He blindsided me, and I've never felt pain like it. And he just stood over the top of me laughing, like just giggling away, laughing and helping me back up. But I'm just like, people like that, like the Islanders especially. You've been hit. So Inga Twigamala was one. I mean, I don't know where to start. Like, there's, as I say, the physical element of it, and the sheer brute sort of force that you get hit by people at times when you're not expecting it. Like the Courtney Laws one that I had back end of my career. That sort of stuff is, I suppose, you learn to take. My role on the field was confrontational because I was on the line. I'm to make decisions on against the defensive line that are wanting to smack me. It always came with risk of being hit, and sometimes you get hit, sometimes you don't. But I always told myself from a very young age, like, you always get back up regardless. Even if you're hurt, you always get back up. If you can't get back up, you're obviously injured. But yeah, definitely if you're winded or something like that, you just get up. But no, the Sale days were interesting from the beginning. It was a real mix of like youth and experience, and I think that was one of the reasons why we went on to eventually win the Premiership in 2006. We won the European Challenge Cup, or it was as it is now, but in 2002 with a youthful squad, but also some really good experience. I was helped massively by a scrum half called Brian Redpath, the Scottish international captain. He was amazing for my development and really, really helped me in terms of game management, in terms of just making the right decisions at the right time. Took a lot of pressure off me when we were playing. And then obviously, to make my job even easier, I've got Jason Robinson outside on the wing, sorry, on the fullback, who's like one of the biggest and best, well, not biggest, but one of the best players that has ever graced the field. Like he was just incredible. He had this unbelievable natural talent anyway. Don't get me wrong, and physically, athletically, it was a hugely natural thing to him. Like we used to do pre-season testing at the start of each year, and everyone would take the time sort of warming up through the bench press, and Robbo would just walk up to us about 140 on the bench. He'd be like, "What's on there?" And he hadn't had a warm up. He'd just look at 140 and go, "I'll give it a go. Just do one rep, put it back on." And went, "Right, I'm done. That's me. I don't need to do any more." He was just a bit of a freak of nature, but he was just yeah. And I suppose where I'm going with that is that yes, he's a freak of nature. Yes, he had this athletic ability, which was just incredible. But what I think a lot of people didn't necessarily see too much was his work ethic and the time that he took to on the training field. And in particular, when he obviously came over from rugby league, he'd never kicked a ball in his life. And then here he was playing international rugby union, where he's now required to kick the ball from a defensive perspective. And he spent hours and hours and hours doing it. And he became I reckon technically one of the best kickers I've seen, because he could kick a spiral like you wouldn't believe. And that just came through sheer practice and mindset and work ethic, which was really nice to be around.
Yeah, and there's a good saying that I like. It's like hard work beats talent, you know. And I am a bit of a believer in that. There are people that have talent and sometimes squander it because they almost a little bit like, well, I'm good at this, bit cocky, and then they just, you know, the natural ability, so to speak. But you know, then there's people that really, really dedicate themselves, and then occasionally you get people like you've just said there, someone that has got this natural ability and a work ethic as well. And, you know, you bring those two together and then obviously you get, you know, like you say, one of the best players ever to grace the kind of sport of rugby.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely a bit of both. And like I say, natural talent can take you so far, can't it? And having boxed, not in a professional manner, on the unlicensed boxing scene, I'm always very clear about that. But again, you're still very competitive, and you see people that rely on natural power, but they don't
Mm.
rely on fitness. So I had no natural ability really in the boxing world. I'm not a particularly technical boxer. I just worked really, really hard at being the fittest heavyweight I could be. So when I fought against other heavyweights, as long as I could avoid being dropped, which I did manage most of the time, but you know, fitness carried me through, and I was able to through my own hard work. So again, and I'm not comparing
Yeah.
my boxing career in any shape or form to your career, you know, totally different levels, but I think the principles are the same, if that makes sense.
No, it's true. It is definitely true. Like you hear Gary Neville talks about it in terms of his football career. Like he said, he openly admits he wasn't the best player out there, but what he did do was he worked incredibly hard and was always first in the training field, last off the training field. And that was the difference. That era, that group of players that obviously that came through that class of 92, whatever it was, 90, is it 92? Whatever.
Yeah, 92, yeah.
Yeah. They worked harder than everybody else, and that's why they were so successful. And I think, like you say, that you've got to have that mindset if you're going to go any further with it. And certainly the best players out there that I've come across, the world class ones, are willing to spend more time than anybody else in the field. Johnny Wilkinson was exactly the same, but there were times when I couldn't necessarily keep up with Johnny because he'd just keep going and keep going and keep going. And I'm like, oh, this is destroying me. Actually, by trying to keep up with him, it's actually destroying me. Yeah,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, like you say, the physical attributes there, and some people have these obscene levels of cardio that it doesn't matter what you do, and you can only do what you can do with what God gave you, so
What you've
to
got, yeah.
yeah, you know, and there are some freaks out there, and then people that you talk about them freak, they annoy me, but it's like a love-hate relationship because you see, I remember people in the military when you're doing a 10 miler with your backpack on, you know, you'd stop for a water stop, and you get someone that like one of the force that'd have a cigarette, and you're
Oh my
like,
God.
I've got a lung coming out of my nose, and this guy is having a cigarette, you know, and it's just one. Um,
Well, Shabal was like that, to be fair. You mentioned him before. Shabal would come in the morning, he'd run for a little bit on a treadmill. He'd sit there having his espresso and go outside and have a fag. Like he had this little smart car that was full of like cigarette butts everywhere and packs and all over the car. But like incredible athlete, he was ripped to the bone. But he didn't mind a fag every now and then.
Again, we look at generations and that, of sportsmen, and that was just kind of one of them things, wasn't it? And did you say he had a smart car?
He did, yeah, he did.
He must
He
have
looked
looked like he
ridiculous.
were wearing that.
Yeah, he looked ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, he could have put his feet out the bottom and run with it, but he just,
Flintstone car.
yeah, exactly. But no, he loved it, and that was him. It was interesting. The French guy who joined Sale in sort of 2004, 2003, 2004, they really bought into what we were like up in the north, in Manchester, and they really bought into the squad. They were awesome. They were awesome. And Philippe Saint Andre was our coach. He obviously did a lot to help them embed them into the squad, to help them with kind of the way of life and stuff. But actually, they really got it. They really understood it. They really wanted to be around the players. They really wanted to learn English. Yeah, they really committed to being at Sale, and they were huge, like squad favourites. Like the lads loved them, but also the fan favourites as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good to hear, because the British historically don't always have the best relationship with the French, do they?
Yeah, no, I get that. I think you find it, from what I've heard, and I don't know this from a personal perspective, but I find, the lads who've gone out and played in France, I think it's one of those where if they don't commit to the French culture and they don't learn to speak French, they don't try, they're discarded quite quickly. And I think if you go, you've really got to buy into it, and then they kind of they welcome you with open arms. But if you don't, then I think it becomes a lot bit more difficult.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that. I have a lot of friends that were in the French Foreign Legion, that I've worked various careers, all over the place, and I've come across some of the Legion lads, and they said the same. You join the Legion, you got to pick up the French. That's a massive thing,
Mm.
or you're literally going to get hit with a stick or something. So
Yeah,
there's an incentive definitely to learn French, I would say.
yeah.
So yeah, 11 years with Sale. So you got 3 Premiership wins, 2 European Challenge Cups, and a European Cup winner. Was that all with Sale? You'll have to excuse my knowledge
No,
there.
no. So one European Challenge Cup and one Premiership was with Sale. So that was 2002, 2006. And then I joined Sarries in 2011, where, sorry, I won also another Challenge Cup actually in 2005. So 2 Challenge Cups with Sale and a Premiership with Sale. And then when I joined Sarries, 2 Premierships and a European Cup with them. The last 2 weeks of my career were European Cup win. 2 weeks later, win the Premiership. So that was an incredible way to finish, to sort of step away from the field. I suppose I look at my career in like 3 parts, certainly in terms of club stuff, like, or thirds. The first third at Sale was like really enjoyable. We had, as I said, we had this mix of youth and experience, coming right the way through, which kind of culminated in us winning the Premiership in 2006. Things started to change after that, and so between the years of 2007 and 2011, for me, they were really difficult times. Our squad changed heavily, coaches kept changing, and we'd gone from almost being at the top of the table to being in relegation battles, and it wasn't where I wanted to be, of course, being a sportsman. And that was also kind of times when I was kind of in and out the England squad as well. I was kind of there and thereabouts, but not really playing too much. And then I joined Sarries in 2011, and for those 5 years, they were some of the best again. And so, not just in terms of, I guess, the trophies that we won, but just in terms of experience and different culture, different way of working, different understanding of how coaches work, the different messages that we got from week to week. I went from a culture of kind of hairdryer treatment if you lose a match, to actually one of real positivity, even if you lose. And I found that really quite hard to, initially when I joined Sarah's, that was quite a hard thing to manage, because like, hold on a second, we've just lost a game. Surely we should be getting absolutely hammered here. But you'd leave a meeting and actually everybody would feel $1 million, and training session afterwards would be like just really high level, really high intensity. because of the messages and because of the way it was delivered to the players and stuff. So that changed my perspective on what was kind of good practice and what wasn't.
Yeah, well, you spend 11 years with one team and the way that they do things, you get used to a kind of system. I know you probably had changes of coaches and stuff like that, but the fundamentals tend to be the same with certain teams, I would say, with my limited knowledge. But then, you change, and then would you say it would give you like an injection of a bit more kind of motivation, perhaps when you move teams, or like a new lease of life? Because obviously,
Yeah.
11 years for one team, obviously internationally, and we'll talk about the British and Irish Lions tour, but sometimes a change is just good all round for kind of mentality and
Mm.
positivity, isn't it? And did you feel that's what kind of really helped with?
Yeah, I got to a stage where I needed a change. I needed to freshen up. I needed to hear some new voices. I needed to just understand different perspectives, and and almost a sense of trying to prove yourself again. As some of that, and maybe some of that as well. When I joined Sarries, is like I've got to prove myself again now to a whole new group of players that don't know me. They only know me by matches I've played against them, but that's it. They don't know what I'm like. So, um, so yeah, there was an element of internal drive again to kind of go, right, it's a fresh start. We start again and see where it takes me. So yeah, it was it was just really, really a positive part of my playing career was that.
Yeah, well, awesome stuff, awesome stuff, and it's good. You've won Premiership titles and cups and stuff like that with one team, and then you've gone to another team and done the same there. That's kind of, I like that. That's got to feel good for you as well. That Unite, and I don't mean this in a kind of, but you get some players that probably didn't reach their full potential because they spent their whole career at one club. And we see it in the football world. You've probably
Mhm.
seen it in the rugby world, where sometimes you get and they become a different player. Like you say, things change, and it's like, well, this isn't the same player just because they've been, they've not got on with the manager, they've not got on with the coach, they're not getting given playing time for whatever
Yeah,
reason, motivation. So again, that whole change in teams and then going on and being successful with a second team. I think that's, I think that again, I think that's down to your kind of mindset of, yeah, I'm not done yet. Plenty more left in the tank, and I'm going to show
yeah,
you guys what I'm capable of.
yeah. I mean, there are plenty of players who'll go through a career and not win anything. So I do feel incredibly privileged and proud to have had those moments, definitely. But one thing I would say though, I think is, and that was certainly a lesson that we picked up later on in my career. Actually, was that sometimes you can focus a lot on the winning the trophies, and actually, I suppose when you sort of step back and think about it, no, not everybody's going to win a trophy. At the time, we obviously had 12 teams all vying for that top spot at the end of the year, but not everybody's going to win it. How do you? And this is where I suppose the strength of the messaging from Sarries and coaches came, was that how do you package up the same thing week after week after week, so it's still an enjoyable atmosphere, so that you're still celebrating stuff that actually might not involve winning trophies. Because to give an example, 2014, we had the European Cup final. I can't remember which one. I think it was the European Cup final against Toulon in Cardiff, which we lost. And then a week or 2 weeks later, we played Northampton in the Premiership final at Twickenham and lost in the last 5 seconds of extra time. And in theory, that you kind of look at that, you kind of reflect on that and go, well, that's such a disappointing season. Whilst we got to final, we've not won anything. So I think the competitive nature of you would be thinking, well, that wasn't good enough. It was rubbish. But then at the same time, when it was Alex Sanderson who I spoke to about it afterwards, he was like, look, let's go back to that year and let's reflect on all the good bits that have happened. Everything we spoke about, so was about making memories. And he said, let's reflect on those memories that we created through the year. And he obviously reeled off a number of different things that had happened in terms of on the field. But then actually, when he started to reflect on the things that happened off the field, so like guys getting engaged, guys getting married, having kids, doing different qualifications for other stuff off the field, some people start their own businesses. When he starts to reel off all of these things, you go, well, actually, yeah, there's a huge amount achieved in that year. It's just that we didn't have the cherry on the cake at the end of it all with the trophies. But actually, let's enjoy that journey of getting there, as opposed to just focusing purely on that one win at the end or the loss at the end. And it really changed my perspective on that and on the season as well. So just quite a nice message, really.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's like, you don't always have to, win massive trophies to have these little wins, and like you say, there's a lot that goes off and I think it's easy for people to kind of almost let their either whatever career it is define them as a person, when really, you got to look at your whole kind of lifestyle, haven't you, and the wins that you have outside and stuff. I'm terrible for that, in that the career I'm doing is what defines me. It's only really been recently where I've kind of realized that there's a lot more to than just what I do for a career, if that makes sense as well.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing, though. You'll have experienced that coming out of the military. Same coming out of sport. You define yourself by what you did, as opposed to perhaps who you are now.
Yeah, that is, you're right. You look back on the stuff you've done. And my fiance tells me all the time, she's like, it's in the past, you're in a new chapter now. And I'm like, I know, but there was this time. And she's like, shut up about the paras. You know what I mean? Yeah, it is what it is. And I can imagine that, when you played sport at your level, it's difficult not to look back with fond memories, probably, regrets as well, that will probably come on to, what sort of regrets you've got. It is difficult. And again, I think that human nature, we do all live. We either live in the future, we live in the past. And it's about that. I know it's a bit of a cliche at the moment, but it is about living in the kind of present, isn't it? And just
It
trying
is,
to
yeah.
enjoy what you've got going off right now, because it's right now, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Life is precious all the time, isn't it? And I think you'll know that from first-hand experience. But certainly in the last 12 months, we've lost a close friend, and you realise how that you got to enjoy those moments, haven't you, now, rather than reflecting on what was or what might be. Just enjoy it for what it is now.
Yeah, they do. And when things like that, and I'm sorry to hear about that. We had one of the guys off our watch sadly lost his life the back end of last year, completely out the blue. Coming up to retirement as well, just out for a walk, and sadly passed away. And it does, but it's almost like a short-lived that you go, right, those things don't matter.
Yeah,
Let's go and enjoy this and do this, because you don't know when your last day might be your last, without sounding morbid. But
yeah,
very quickly you get back into that stressing about, oh God, there's that bill or there's this to do, and you have to have a step back and go, it doesn't really matter on the grand scale of things. And I
yeah,
think
completely.
time of reflection, isn't it? And realizing what's important and what's not. Refreshing yourself about it. Right, that doesn't matter. This matters. Family, blah blah blah. Yeah. So moving on, because we went off at a tangent there. I do that all the time with my brain. That's one of the wonders of ADHD. That's great. You just go off at a tangent. There you go. But anyway, so yeah, highest point scorer in the history of the Premiership. I mean, is that a record that's still held now?
Yeah, don't ask me how many, and don't ask me how far away the person in second place is. Yeah, it's still going, and I think it'll be a while till it gets broken. Uh, just I don't necessarily reflect on it, to be honest. I just think it's a nice thing to have. It was just the nature of what I did. It was my role on the field to kick goals, to set other people up to score tries, and yeah, just it's part and parcel of the territory that came with what I did. I never necessarily found it easy. Just worked hard at it, and I think this is where the mental side comes in again. It's just that was the hardest part of professional sport for me, was the goal kicking side, because that is it's an individual role, individual skill within a team sport, and everybody else relies on you to get that bit right. So yeah, there was the pressure that sometimes came with that was sometimes too much, and yeah, perhaps one of the reasons why I think I struggled in the early part of my career, definitely.
Yeah, well, I mean, all eyes are on you, aren't you? When you're on the field and you're kind of passing, you make a mistake, the ball slips out, and people are like, well, it gets forgotten very quickly because the next move. But obviously, there's a pause when you're kicking for whatever it is, or certain things.
Yeah,
So yeah,
and sometimes you don't get. Sometimes you might have to wait another 10, 15 minutes to get another shot. So then it's kind of sitting on your mind a little bit, going, like, when's it coming? When's it coming? And then so it's that ability to stop and put it to one side and move on very quickly is a difference.
Yeah, but that's one hell of achievement. So hats off, their highest point score in the history of the Premiership. So fair play to you. Talk about your international sort of, with England and the British and Irish Lions and stuff like that. Obviously, I always say, and I don't know because I'm not a professional sportsman, and I probably won't. I think of life, that sort of thing's passed me by now at 45. You never know. I could be ping pong, sort of international champion or something. You never know. A lot of ping pong in the fire service. From a sort of supporter and a fan kind of perspective, I would say of a professional sports person, would you say it's the highest accolade to represent your country in the sport that you do?
Yeah, I mean, well, the Lions it is. Yeah, the Lions to play. I didn't play in a test match on the Lions tour in New Zealand. I played in all the midweek games, but the Lions as a whole is the pinnacle of rugby, because ultimately you're not only selected for your country, you're then out of the next four teams selected in a smaller squad to go and tour the Southern Hemisphere. Yeah, that was a huge honour, and also a little bit of a shock, really, if I must admit. 2005 was not necessarily the strongest Six Nations for us as England, and certainly for me individually. I played all right. I didn't kick very well, if I'm being honest, and I was really surprised to be selected. Clive Wood had selected 4 fly halves. Johnny went, Stephen Jones went, Ronan O'Gara, and myself. I think any other time where they picked 3, I probably wouldn't have been chosen, but that one occasion where they took 4, I was there, and I had such a good time, but I wouldn't, not in a sense of like sometimes think the Lions, you kind of get this stuff around sort of work hard, play hard, and we did a little bit, but I think I just enjoyed it because in terms of the midweek team, we were unbeaten through the tour. It was just a really surreal experience that I was just like trying to enjoy all the moments that came with it. It was weird. It kind of came and went really quickly, and I've never really sort of sat back and reflected on those moments, but yeah, it's certainly something that I am hugely proud of. And now obviously with it coming around the corner, I know they're going to Australia in a few months' time. It's really exciting knowing what's on the horizon for them as players, and that selection. And they're doing a live selection at the O2, I think, in front of like 2,000 fans and stuff, which would be awesome. It'll be amazing to watch and to see it all unfold. I mean, it's weird because it's one of those things where you find out that you're selected at the same time as everybody else. So
Yeah.
with the England squad, you get told by the coach and you get a heads up that you're going to be involved. But with the Lions, you sit there. Well, when I was told, you sit there and you watch it on Sky Sports News like everybody else does, and you see if your name gets read out and comes on the bar on the bottom. So it's mad really. But yeah, it's just incredible experience.
Yeah, well, what's not to love? You're playing a sport that you're obviously massively passionate about, or you wouldn't be there. And you're in an absolutely stunning country, getting to travel around, see a bit of the culture. I've been to New Zealand. New Zealand is absolutely beautiful. Still one of my favourite places. So, did you get to travel around like both islands, or?
Well, we played games in both islands, but when you're on a rugby tour, it's one of those where you kind of, and particularly with the Lions, you kind of moving very quickly between locations. There's a game every few days, and so you a lot of the time you're kind of in preparation mode, or you're in training mode, or you're helping the other team prepare for their match. So I think whenever I've been on tour, I've never quite gone full culture because I'm there to do a job, so I kind of see a lot of training fields and hotel rooms and whatever else, but just I'd like to. I'll go back eventually and enjoy it for the country that is, because I know that it's a beautiful place. It's just I haven't really seen a huge amount of.
Yeah, no, fair play. But like you say, it's part and parcel. That was the job you were doing at the time. You were there to do a job, weren't you? So no.
Mm.
But yeah, like I say, what's not to love about that? You get into a beautiful country, doing a play. Even just playing the sport that you love is good enough, but to do it in a foreign country and to be successful at it as well. So obviously, what I want to talk about before we move on to kind of life after rugby is like, we talk about mental health, a lot, and different forms, and how whether that be PTSD, what I want to talk about with yourself is like obviously injuries in rugby. Rugby's a very hard, brutal sport, full contact sport. Injuries are very common. How do you how does that affect you mentally when you're down for playing for this or that, and and then all of a sudden you get an injury, a knee injury, or I know you've experienced your fair share, like every sort of professional rugby player. How does that affect you mentally, and how do you kind of deal with it and bounce back? So it's
Yeah, I don't. I'll talk about the injuries as well, but I think there's a lot in terms of the mental side, and I've mentioned it before in terms of managing the pressure and dealing with like that expectation or the loss or the impact of you missing goals, kicks at goal that will ultimately kind of finish games in a loss. And so there's kind of lots of stuff that I think I struggle with over time. And then in terms of your injury stuff, like I have experienced a number of different long-term injuries. From ACL injuries to fractured cheek and shoulder repairs and stuff. And the hardest thing I think is that loneliness that you have. You go from being part of a big squad, contributing every single week, both on the training field and then at the weekend when you're one of the lucky ones to be selected and play. So then suddenly you're doing rehab, you're on your own, you kind of spend a lot of time with the physio, with the S&C coach. Your days are longer because you've got lots more to fit in from your weights into your fitness into all your rehab stuff that you need to do and all your physio and all that sort of stuff. So it becomes a bit of a grind, and it is a lonely place. My first ACL injury, we used to train in a public gym actually, which is quite nice, but I found myself like trying to make conversations with random people because I was just going, I'm so bored and feel so lonely at the moment. I just need to have a chat with anybody. Anybody will do. Like the
we look chatting to everyone,
70-year-old man over here, just no idea what he's doing in the gym, but he wants to chat, so I quite happily chat to him. And it was just, those are the moments where it requires a little bit more of that kind of mental toughness to deal with it and get through it. I suppose in one sense, I always knew that I'd get back. I was never in that mindset where I wasn't going to get back and play on the field again. So I think I always had that in my mind. I was like, right, I know that there's a process for me getting there. It might be 6 months, it might be 8 months, but I know that every day that I'm doing something, I know I'm a step closer to where I want to get to. So I think that's how I dealt with it. I knew that there was an end in sight, and I always knew that getting back on the field was my reward for all the hard work that I was going to put into my rehab and training. I think the hardest thing mentally for me was dealing with the emotional toll of step-backs on the field. So in terms of like when you miss kicks at goal and it impacts performance, impacts result. Like I said before, I'm from like sort of stereotypical northern family with no emotion, stiff upper lip. Certainly not somebody that would wear my heart on my sleeve at all. And yet I would go through these moments early on in my career where I really struggled to open up and share that vulnerability with people, to say that I was really struggling.
Yeah.
And it didn't help at times that the psychologist of the team was also at times the kicking coach. So like kicking coach, and that's the issue that I've got. So I need to speak to them, but I also need to speak to them who's also the psychologist who's supposed to help me. But that same person is also a selector. So I'm thinking
It's not ideal, is it?
not ideal. There's a bit of a conflict of interest. So so in the end, I bottled it all up. I just internalized everything, which is the worst thing I could have done. I mean, that's me anyway, as my personality. But the worst thing to do was I just accentuated the problem. So I just, wouldn't share it with anybody, and then became quite closed off to lots of relationships. Even relationship with my wife now, she's been with me through thick and thin, and there are still, I look back and know that there's times when I just pretty useless. I mean, she jokes, she calls me an emotional retard, which I probably am. But I'm certainly learning now to be much more open and vulnerable about it all, because I know how important it is to share those moments, which kind of moves me a step forward with what I'm doing now. So yeah, it's definitely not been easy. I must admit, like professional sport's not easy. and internationally it wasn't easy. You talked about before, like for me, it was a bit of a roller coaster. Some days it'd be really good, some days it'd be really shit, and he'd be getting hammered by the press and hammered by the public. That they were some really hard times and horrible times to deal with. Yeah, thankfully you kind of come out the other side and managed to kind of forge a career of 16 years, but not without its troubles, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, and I suppose that is the thing, from a supporter's kind of perspective, we see the glamour, we see the on the field, the triumphs, and everything else. What we don't see is exactly that, the struggles that everyone faces behind closed doors. And I think, without going on about social media, that's what we do. Again, we kind of criticize people without knowing the whole facts. We do it in the
Mm.
news. We do it in the media, we do it on social media, and we do it all the time. We criticize people without knowing the backstory, without knowing the ins and outs of why that person's done that, or so it's very, very difficult. And obviously, you're in the public eye as a professional sports person, and you kind of can be struggling, and yeah, so it's a difficult one.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you look at the stuff with Marcus Rashford at Man United, like getting absolutely hammered for his performances, and everybody's like, "Well, he's a footballer and he's getting paid millions and he should be able to deal with it." And it's like, well, maybe, but he's a human like we all are. Like, and anybody in that situation, you were all going to struggle at some point. To expose it on the worldwide scale for him, and for lots of sports people, I think people need to just sometimes stop and reflect what they're going to say or why they're going to say something on social media before they say it. It's so easy, isn't it? You've got the keyboard warriors. It's very easy to comment on something that they think somebody's shit or they should be doing this better. It's just like, well, take a moment and to understand what might be going on for them, because there might also be other stuff going on in their life which are impacting the way they're playing as well, but which people won't know about. So I'm just hugely, I suppose, passionate really about people being more aware of what they say and why they say it on social media. Definitely, because you don't know the impact they can have.
Yeah, I know, I relate 100%. I've had my fair share of kind of trolls, and not too many, to be honest, but that comes with when you're trying to grow something on social media. The more popular it becomes, the more flack you get, so to
Mm.
speak. But I'm all about positivity. I don't do the negativity. I have been there where I've sat about ready to type a comment out on a post that I know nothing about, just because I think we've all been there. And then
Yeah, it is true, isn't it? It's true.
yeah, and I think, well, why the hell am I even bothered? It's nothing to do with me. But that's what social media does. It sucks you in. But it's kind of realised, we're of a certain age now, realising what's important and what's not. And I don't need to comment. I don't need to read the comments of people that have got negative things to say about guests, because you get it. And I just think, well, I've just had a real
Mm.
chat with that guest, came across. As long as that person's good with me, and it's not none of my business, so just don't involve me in it. And I'm
Yeah,
the same. I don't need to stick my nose into stuff.
yeah.
So, 16-year career comes to an end. Obviously, the ups and downs, the trophies, the wins, the points scoring records comes to an end. Was it? Had you planned for the end, or was it just all of a sudden the end? Shit, what do I do now?
I had a plan. The only thing I planned for really was financially a little bit. I tried to put away a little bit of money so that if I didn't have a job immediately, then I could support the family. So kind of that was the priority for me. I had a young family as well. I've got 5 kids, and the twins, my youngest, were born like a year and a bit before I retired. So we were still in the thick of it in terms of toddlers and young ones.
You've got your own rugby team nearly there. Just a few more, you're all sorted.
I know. It's why I'm sitting in a box room now. I've got no room in the house. I've just got this little area that I've got for my office. Did it come around? I was getting to a stage. I was just like physically, my body was breaking. My body was breaking down on me a lot, and I was just mentally I could have carried on, and I was enjoying it. But I might not have been able to carry on at Saracens. It could have meant me moving the family and going somewhere else in the UK to find another club. And at that stage, I was like, well, for the sake of 12 months, 2 years, I'm not sure it's really worth it. So I just like, and then at the same time, Sarries offered me a role within the management to do some scouting and recruitment work for them. And it just seemed like a nice fit. It seemed like a gentle fall from into retirement, really, more than anything else. So I took that on. I just thought it was probably the right time to go. And I have no regrets, actually. I don't have any regrets in terms of when. I think if I was to go back, I probably would have been more prepared, sort of work-wise, or in terms of
Wouldn't
like,
we all? Wouldn't we all?
yeah, I know, because I've certainly explored lots of different things since playing. I only spent 12 months in that role doing the scouting stuff, but realised it wasn't for me. I did some sort of business coaching work for a little bit before COVID destroyed it all, and then fell into medical device sales, selling products to surgeons that fix the injuries that I had to deal with and suffer myself. So that felt like uh, quite a nice fit, but in the end, it was too much. It was too much sort of strain physically and mentally. I was driving around all around the country trying to sell something that I didn't really believe in, and things that broke a little bit. So when you're in theatre and a product breaks, it's only one person the surgeon's looking at to fix it, and that's you. So that can be a little bit stressful at times. So so I've explored lots of different things, but the one thing that I've always enjoyed is the coaching side, and that's both on the field and off the field. And I've finally reached a stage where I'm more at peace than ever from not playing rugby, and I'm now in a position where I want to give back. And it's the reason why I started Rugby Buddy. It's this whole idea of supporting young up and coming rugby players with the mental side of the games, building mindset, building resilience, ultimately with the goal to improve performance, but knowing that there's a knock-on effect or an improvement in mental health if they can have the tools and techniques to be able to deal with setbacks and competition and comparison and injury and all of those things that they'll naturally experience. And I think knowing my journey of knowing that I wasn't able to speak out, I say I was able, but I didn't do it from a young age because I internalized everything. I'm almost trying to encourage the younger generation to do that now so they don't get to the end like I did and go, now they're starting from scratch, like learning to be vulnerable and learning to be brave and all that sort of stuff, the emotional stuff that I'm trying to do now and through therapy and lots of different things. So yeah, there's kind of a bigger picture to it all more than anything else. It's kind of protecting that younger generation more than anything else. And if I can impact them from my experience, then brilliant.
No, I find that fascinating that you obviously, and you're, it's not like you're sat there preaching to people from no experience. You're literally drawing on your personal experiences of doing it wrong, in effect, and making those errors and teaching, probably the better way to go about it. And that's good. I'm glad we kind of talked about that towards the end because, I we're not too dissimilar there in goals and what we're trying to achieve. My main goal is to get rid of that stigma with sort of, I know I say ex-military and emergency services and stuff like that, but it's as a whole really, and for men as well of certain
It's
ages.
for men, isn't it? I think it's definitely for men
The
of
big,
our age, definitely.
yeah, and we just don't, and it's because like you said there was. Your coach, your kicking coach, was also kind of the person that you went to when you had a few dramas. So it's a bit like you kind of, well, I'll just not say anything because it might jeopardize this. And that's blokes. They look for ways, in a way, not to talk about it, whether that's legitimate or
Yeah,
there's an excuse or just because they don't want to.
you just create a story in your own mind, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. And look for a way not to address the problem. I've done it myself. It's easy to just go, no, it'll be fine. And that's what we do. That'll be all right. And when it's not, and that's always what I've, been trying to do. And that's why I love having, rugby players on, ex-military, actors, comedians, boxers, because my idea is surely if people watch this and see, look, they can be really open about their kind of feelings, then there's no harm in me speaking about it as well, So I think
It's
that's
taken me a while though. Like I think that's the thing, isn't it? I'm certainly learning more and more each day about myself and kind of where I've come from and where I'm at now, and that just doesn't happen overnight. I think where you're coming from and certainly where I'm coming from is it's being or providing an environment that's safe enough for people to speak up, and that's the big thing, isn't it?
yeah, absolutely, and like I say, just get rid of that stigma that it's okay to talk about it. and you know, just I think half the battle is finding out that there's something wrong and taking them first steps to seek help. Because
Mm.
you know, if you don't know there's anything wrong or you think you're okay, then why would you seek help? You know, but it's sitting down and actually identifying, whether that be through your own research. You know, I was lucky enough to have a partner that kind of pointed out a few things with me along the way that I've gone, oh, okay, you know, and that helps. And it's about, like you say, and you know what, Rugby Buddy, I know that the whole buddy system is an important thing. You know, if you've got people
Mm.
around, they will spot problems. You know, if they're invested in you, and you know they will spot problems with you and point them out to you that you can
Yeah.
kind of explore a bit further. You know, so yeah. But I think it's fantastic what you're doing. Where can people find? Is there a website that people go on and social media links and stuff? I'll put them all on as
Yeah.
well.
It's rugby-buddy.com is my website. There's still lots of stuff I'm trying to develop at the moment. So yeah, all conversations are good conversations for me at the moment. And then it's rugby.buddy on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn, but I don't use that as much. But yeah, I'll just be under my name on LinkedIn. But yeah, rugby.buddy on Instagram, which is kind of where I've started everything from there, and just trying to push that message far and wide, really, more than anything else.
No, absolutely brilliant, pal. Well, I will put up all the links for anyone that's watching, the viewers and followers. The links will be on this video. So yeah, no, it's been an absolute pleasure, Charlie. Thank you very
Well,
much. I think it's brilliant what you're doing. An outstanding career, and I'm glad you're doing well, pal. So thank you very much for taking the time to come on.
thank you. Thanks so much for having me.